As you can see, it's a pretty murky winter's day here in Lanzarote in January 2022. I actually have just had a meeting in Tahiche, and I thought I'd film a little bit around Tahiche for you and talk to you about it. To most people, it's really only two things, this place. It's where the Fundación Cesar Manrique is, and it's where the Levan Panaderia or bakery is located. Always busy. And basically you pass through Tahiche on the main road at the end there that goes on up to Tahiche, or you take a right and come down this road which takes you towards the clouds and the north of the island. But as I said, there's a lot more to Tahiche than those two things. So let's go and check it out. The town runs across both sides of the main road, going up from Arrecife to Tahiche. It's home to about 7,000 people. It's become something of a commuter town. It's people moving out of Arrecife quite often come here. It's only a few kilometres down the road from the capital. So it's relatively easy to get to and from work. This is known as the commercial zone of Tahiche. So we've got a little supermarket behind me, children's playground, a lucha wrestling ring, and here's the post office, and above the post office is the Sociedad, which is absolutely huge. We've been to a few dues there over the years. This is the plaza. Of course, there's a farmacia, a ferreteria, which is an ironmonger's. And then really in all directions from this sort of central part of Tahiche, there are houses, quite large ones. Not really any apartment blocks, they're all villas and bungalows. From here you get a decent view of how big Tahiche is. And we're up at the church now, beautiful little church, right in the centre of town. And then if we look across there, you can see the lava fields, and in that section of lava fields, that's where Cesar Manrique built his house, Torre de Tahiche. We all know it now as the Fundación Cesar Manrique, of course. Looking up the hill, we can see Tahiche and Nazareth. I said at the top that there's a lot more to Tahiche than we think. Well, there is. There's the School of Tourism here, for example. So many of the waiters, bar people, receptionists and so on who serve you on the island will have done their training at the School of Tourism here. It also is home to the island's prison, which is just down the other side of the hill here. The only prison on the island. Some famous inmates there at the moment, including Dimas Martin and Reyes, I can't remember his first name, was it Juan Reyes, the former mayor of Playa Blanca. And it's not just recent as well, Tahiche's importance, because looking back over to there, we're looking at, in the centre of screen now, Zonzamas, which was where the palace of the king of the Guanches was. Not much left of it now, but this was the seat of power of the island pre-Castilian invasion. So as I said before, there's quite a lot more to Tahiche than you think, and it's a place most people pass and don't really think about or consider. What we're going to do now is wend our way back to Aria, and instead of hanging a right at the bakery, as we would normally, we'll go up over the top and show you some of the interesting places on our way between Tahiche and Aria. Look at those clouds, they're quite menacing. I've got a feeling it might rain. That'll be interesting. We've driven up the road towards Tahiche, about 3 kilometres. That's Tahiche, you can see in the distance there. The only thing really between there and where we are now is a small settlement over there called Las Cabreras. From memory, about a dozen, maybe 15 houses there. But we're now in Nazareth, and the building we're looking at right in front of that bus is the Sociedad. Quite a big Sociedad, well worth visiting, famous for their slow roasted lamb. And Tahiche itself is another 3 kilometres up the road. But I just pulled in here to show you the Sociedad. Nazareth really starts here on both sides of the road, but we're going to go up the hill to Oasis de Nazareth, which is the bit that everyone knows, and we'll take a look at Lagomar, which is advertised on this billboard here. Visit the famous house of Omar Sharif, Lagomar. So let's go and see what that looks like from the outside. Here we are up the hill in Nazareth. You can see the sun shining up in the valleys over there. Mainly large villas, as you can see, built higher and higher up the hill. There once again is Tahiche down the bottom of it. And that's the top row of villas there. And it's home to Lagomar. The story of Lagomar is an interesting one. It was built, commissioned by a British property developer called Sam Benedi in the 1970s. He hired Cesar Manrique to oversee the project, which he did with his partner Jesus Soto. They created a magnificent house literally in a volcano there, with a swimming pool and lots of interesting caves and rooms off it and so on. Well worth visiting if you get a chance. There's memorabilia about Omar Sharif. The story goes, and I think it is a story, that Benedi was playing cards and sold the property to Sharif and then won it back in a game of bridge. I think it's a bit of a myth, but it's a nice story, and there's lots of Omar Sharif stuff in there. Also a restaurant in there, and a good venue for a wedding and that sort of thing. So that's Nazareth. I will take you in there one day, but I haven't got time today. Well, it doesn't rain often in Lanzarote, but it can rain, and it's really raining heavily. You can see how flooded the road is there as we come into Los Valles. The plan was to get out and walk you around Los Valles, but as you can see, it's still raining quite hard, and unfortunately that's not really compatible with walking around with a camera and a gimbal. Los Valles is a lovely little village. It's called Los Valles because it is literally surrounded by hills and is therefore one big valley. Most fertile part of the island, lots and lots of fincas and farms here, some beautiful houses, and they regularly win, you know, those kind of most beautiful village in Spain or the Canaries prizes here. All there is really, apart from the houses and the farms, is a Sociedad and a shop, and that's about it. So I'm going to carry on up the hill now, out of Los Valles towards Aria, and we'll see if the rain stops before I get back to the office. This is a classic example of what happens here when we do get really heavy rain. We're just not set up for it, we don't have the drainage for it, and as you can see there's basically a muddy river flowing down the road, presumably heading for the closest barranco, but that's really flowing, as you can see. Some poor soul on his bike there. I just overtook him. There's another one coming up the hill. Now I stopped here. The original plan, of course, was to show you the view, which is pretty unusual, I guess, for Lanzarote, but not a very good one. We're at the highest point of the island, and this isn't fog, this is actually cloud. So we're up in the clouds. So this is going to be a wrap from up here. Just an unusual phenomenon. I think the only time we ever use our rear fog lights in Lanzarote is when the cloud is here. One thing I did want to mention, I talked about a couple of sociedades, Tahiche and Los Valles, and people often struggle to find them, and I think the reason they struggle to find them is because they're often not called sociedades, they're called teleclubs, Teleclubs, and they're called that because they were originally set up in Franco's time, and they had the village televisions in them, so people would go and watch TV in them. So that's it from a very murky, very wet, and somewhat unusually miserable Lanzarote, but have a great weekend wherever you are. We're heading down to Playa Blanca, and hopefully we'll get some sunny video from there for you for next week. Bye for now.